we have a really good network of psychotherapists, maybe 15 or 20. And what happened with us was we started in cannabis. We cultivate, we develop seeds, we produce very high quality, potent formulations in cannabinoids for relief of pain, sleep, relaxation, stress, and so on. And we're in our 5th generation of product development there. About 3 years ago, it's almost 3 years now, that we had a group of psychotherapists that came to us and said, Lou, we really appreciate what you are doing with plants and mushrooms, and we need your help. We have some patients who are struggling with depression or addiction recovery, and we'd love to send a few of them to you, and perhaps you could assist them with microdosing. Microdosing in this context at that time was to try and give them a safe, reliable, trusted source for psilocybin and other formulations that could be of help for relieving depression. And so what started as a very organic process, today, now 3 years later, we have over 160 patients that have come through patient referrals. We've expanded. We do classes. We do anything we can to provide education and information to people all over the country who are looking and exploring the use of psilocybin and other psychedelics in the context of microdosing as a remedy, as a solution. So if you imagine there's medical on one side, which is drug development, there's a great deal of capital going into drug development, clinical opening of clinics, the use of ketamine for clinical assisted therapies. There's recreational, which really, frankly, 95% or more of the people who have had any kind of experience with a psychedelic was in a recreational context. They likely didn't know the strain, they didn't know the dosage, and it was very often done in the spirit of going to a great concert, have a great time at the festival. And most people, whether they had a good experience, a transformative experience, or perhaps a negative experience, came from that recreational experience. There's another lane which we honor, which is the ceremonial. The ceremonial is the interest that people may have in doing retreats and journeys. It's usually in the area of psychoactives, such as the ayahuasca, and where there really needs to be very close supervision, very good teaching, which we honor. We're in the medicinal lane, so what we've been trying to do is carve out a medicinal process, and that medicinal process has a set of parameters. One, it requires class and education, much like we're doing this evening. Two, it requires consultation, more private, more one-on-one, so that we can help a user identify their intention. We can also help with preparation. We can help with preparation, and we can help with access to different medications, and we can help with integration, which is very often very important for people. And so what we've noticed in the last year, since we've been doing more and more, there's been more and more interest. Why is there interest? There's interest, one, because there's more media, more documentaries, more research. the great work that MAPS is doing out in California, John Hopkins, Mount Sinai here in New York, NYU, fantastic amount of research underway. And finally, because in many instances, if the user feels safe, if they really feel safe, and they're getting formulations that are well formulated, trusted, they can really, we see tremendous recovery. And we're always respectful to the need for research. We're not the doctors, but in this very organic way that we found ourselves to be in a role of coaching and guidance, we have learned a great deal. And so our interest is to grow our community and share more. The main purpose tonight, well, let me just say, anyone joining that has interest in microdosing and would like to sign up for a consultation to explore what the options are, one-on-one private, is 100% complimentary. This is part of our mission to try to educate and provide safe space. And you can sign up for microdosing on the website. You could send an email to Derek, who will share his email at the Alchemist Kitchen. And we welcome you, friends, family, referrals for one-on-one. The call tonight was more about assisted therapy. And assisted therapy has grown quite a bit from the community of clientele that we have already who are microdosing. And what we're learning that we wanted to share with you guys tonight is that if microdosing is really for the purpose of elevation of mood, elevating the mood, tempering anxiety, managing the tendency to overreact to the escalation or the triggers that get us upset or angry, stress us out. Microdosing is the interest of managing that experience so that one can pursue the larger interest, which is personal growth. Yeah. How can I grow? How do we grow? So in talking with our team and Derek this evening, what we want to share with you is the architecture, the process by what we're seeing, which is a growing number of people microdosing either with us or on their own, and wanting to go deeper. Because the mushroom is going to the root cause. It very often identifies trauma. And quite a few people start to feel like they'd like to have a deeper dive. And although our specialty has been taking people self-directed, we have no choice now but to recognize that sometimes people want to go deeper and they need support. They can't do it on their own. They need assistance. So the chat tonight is to share the different avenues by which one can seek assistance. And we're going to talk a bit about that so that we can give you a little more of a framework in how you can pursue assisted psychedelic therapy, you know. Right, Derek? That's our
yeah. I mean, firstly, is everyone is that clear to kind of everyone here? I know it's a lot of information. You're going to be hit with a lot of information at first. So I added in the chat here. If you have any questions as they come up as we're talking, feel free to ask them in the chat. We'll get to some questions later. As of now, there's 11 people. There was 78 signups, so we'll see as we go along. But yeah, just get your ears open and we'll tell you all about it. And then we'll go deeper as the questions come up. But yeah, I don't know if you want to kick it off, Lou. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm going to continue. I just wanted you to for them to hear your thoughts. And
Well, I would
so,
say, sorry, like Lou was saying, you know, we have a lot of microdosing patients, and as you start to incorporate the microdosing into your life, like the mushroom will want you to go a little further. You're going to want to put things a lot more into perspective. So these sessions, these assisted sessions, help you do that in a way that is safe and, you know, with someone else. So there's a balance between the micro and the macro, and I think that's what kind of what we're talking on, and that's kind of what we're trying to figure out here, and that's what we're bringing.
So the first avenue is there have been a whole host of clinics that have opened around the country. And these clinics have been promoting ketamine treatments, the use of ketamine with a therapist. And one can sign up and take different numbers of treatments. And ketamine is a legal psychoactive, and so it was very opportunistic for the clinics to begin using ketamine. And I think for the most part, people who have signed up for ketamine-assisted psychedelic therapy have found it to be helpful. It tends to be very expensive, so we're always a bit concerned about that. Is it not really affordable for so many people? But we wouldn't want to be disparaging to it, right? Because if you want to do assisted therapy with psilocybin or other psychoactives, you're dealing with still now although there's decriminalization going on around the country, you're dealing with still regulation. And so regulation is challenging. And of course, many people think going deeper is simply to go down to Costa Rica or Peru and take an ayahuasca journey for a week or two. And I can tell you of the many, many, many friends and clients that we have, if you're not prepared to go to make such a big trip, and if you're blessed to have the time and the resources to go, very often where it falls short is in integration. People have a transformative experience. They have just the courage to go and the ability to create the time to go. They come back and they had a great experience and a great sweat lodge and the swim at the beach and beautiful meeting of new friends and all good. But where's the integration? Where's the community?
Yeah,
we have over 700 members in our community, so we are really understanding the power of giving people places and ways to connect. So Derek and I and a couple of other team participants have decided that we should have some framework. So what is this framework? So the first framework is someone identifies they'd like to go deeper and they'd like to take doses of a psychoactive medication and they'd like assistance. So the first tier of that type of assistance we call sitting, right? Yeah. Traditionally, Derek, it's called trip sitting. Someone wants to do something, they don't want to be alone. They'd like someone to come right to their home or to a place that's safe, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about the context of trip sitting?
Yeah. So as Lou said, like trip sitting is basically when you don't want to do it alone, right? And so there's many different, it's not just that someone shows up, right? There's a different protocol. There's a different, like Lou said, there's an integration, right? It's not something that you can just kind of get into. So if you decide to do the trip sitting route, well, there would be, we would set intentions, and it would be usually with someone that is, they don't have therapeutic experience. So they're not a therapist. They're just someone with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of the mushroom world, right? And they're able to help guide you into the path and help you assist with what intentions you have by going deeper. Usually it'll be either at, a venue of either your choosing, or it can be in a group of up to 5 people. It can be done solo. But it's not so much, as a therapeutic setting, right? So
That's right. It's really based on people who simply want to, either in a small group, intimate, confidential, in the session, it's very often a nice conversation. There's a discussion about the medicine itself, how long it will last, and so on. The way that sitting very often works is starts out with a bit of an intake. So people interested in sitting would have an intake. So the host, let's say in this context, let's say Derek was going to be the sitter and organize the group. An intake, perhaps a face-to-face meeting or a Zoom call, to simply ensure that the intentions, the expectations, the outcomes are documented. What's needed, what's needed.
in order for you to get the most out of your journey. Like a lot of people think that they can just take, the medicine and they would have a profound experience and they can be cured, etc. But that's not really how it works. It works very well when you narrow in on your intentions with why you're doing it, and then you can prepare your subconscious for then when it comes time to bridging the conscious with the subconscious, that it can get the most out of it. So that's kind of where the sitter role comes into play. Yeah.
The sitter can also has the experience to identify, well, maybe what you need is a facilitator.
Yeah.
Or maybe what you need to have a conversation with a good therapist first, like an exploratory. We have a whole network of professional doctors, psychotherapists, psychiatrists, and sometimes people think that they want to go deeper, but they don't necessarily have where they can communicate professionally with someone that might help them. A good sitter will be able to identify, you know what, maybe you should talk to a facilitator, or maybe you should talk to a psychotherapist beforehand, and we can set that up. A facilitator is one who has either therapeutic experience, meaning they have studied or taken a course or some classes, or have some more academic credentials to justify facilitation.
Yeah.
Often their training has been through apprenticeship. Maybe they've had a residency with a shamanic teacher. Maybe they've done Naropa Institute. Maybe they've been at Esalen. Maybe they've had indigenous experience. So the facilitator is someone that the sitter works with quite often. Very often the sitters are those who are interested in becoming facilitators, but the facilitators also know the groups are organized with more, more with teachers, more therapy, more guidance, deeper work. Facilitators, the good ones, can, they organize, they'll set something up upstate, or, if they put a community together, but very often they're following a certain protocol. So a protocol meaning they may start people out with a heart opener. Perhaps the journey work is with psilocybin, but perhaps the journey work is with ayahuasca. They will have a process. It's normally a longer process than a sitter, right, Derek? A sitter is usually no more than an afternoon, a day, not overnight. Whereas very often with facilitators, right, it goes deeper into an evening, or it's an overnight, and then there's integration the next day.
It's more of a journey catered to the specificity of like the medicine, you know what I mean, as opposed to the sitter that is more, you could say it's not as professional, as well as tight packed as a facilitator, right? It's more The facilitator can go
Which,
deeper.
yeah, I think it's professional in the context that the expectation is it's not going to try and analyze the experience. It's
Exactly.
just going to create safe space so
Yes.
one can have the experience. And for a lot of people, that is a nice step after microdosing, because
Yeah.
the mushroom is knocking on the door and saying,
Let me in.
hey, Derek, hey, maybe you got some trauma from childhood. Maybe you should just explore it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it massages the muscle, and it builds more self-confidence and more self-worth on this journey. It's very often used as a stepping stone to
The facilitation.
talking a facilitator, or perhaps taking a trip where going more to a retreat, because what the third tier is very often with a teacher. We would call a teacher. That would be a real professional. The teacher may be coming from shamanic background. We'll always have to be careful with the term shamanic, because shamanic for us carries wisdom and credentials, and it's not voodoo. There's a process. Very often teachers, particularly the shamanic, they have exceptionally good access to the medicine itself. They have a recipe, or they have a process in which they host and take people through that experience. But
they dedicate their lives.
Go ahead. Yes.
They've dedicated their lives to understanding this particular medicine that they specialize in, and so they have over maybe 20 plus years, 15 years, etc. Right? As opposed to going in, the facilitator has 5+ years. Maybe the facilitator is headed towards the shamanic route, and the trip sitter is just someone that has, on a very base level, a lot of experience with a particular plant medicine, right? So these are the levels.
That's right. And also there's a whole contingency of clients and people in our circle who are not ready for a shamanic experience. They simply want to have an altered state. They just want to get into an altered state, see what it feels like, explore it. And very often they'd rather do that with a PhD, or with someone who would be considered more of an integrative doctor, with psychedelic training. There's that's a growth industry where you're seeing people with medical backgrounds, or nurses who burnt out. I know several burnt out from COVID, nurses, caretakers with a lot of caretaking experience, spending a year or two in psychedelic assisted therapy, facilitating, and they provide perhaps a higher level of education and teaching. But the term shamanic, I think the way we want you to respect and appreciate shamanic is wisdom, insight, and always with connecting us to the realization that the fungi we are fungi. 400 million years of evolution of fungi, we are the fungi, and the shamanic, when it's done properly, gives you this great embrace, right, Derek? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I agree. And we're living in an age right now where you're hearing about mushrooms everywhere on the streets in Washington Square Park or wherever, and it's become very popular lately, as opposed to what it was 50 years ago. And so, if taken within the wrong context, within the wrong set or setting, and just nonchalantly taking a big dose, well, the mushroom is a powerful, intelligent life form that will very much humble you, right? So to be able to create a setting that supports the mushroom and helps, facilitate that entire intelligence, you can get the most out of it, and you can do it in a healthy and safe way. So, yeah.
Okay, so those are the 3 tiers of assistance. 1, consultation. Being able to feel you have a place you could go to ask questions, have consultation, set intention, and begin a process in which you could explore microdosing. 2 is after microdosing, most people take breaks. By the way, it's not something you're doing forever. Microdosing is something that is intended to alleviate the stresses so that you can pursue removing obstructions. What are those obstructions? Right now, the most popular obstructions that I'm seeing is procrastination. That's an obstruction.
Yeah.
People don't, they don't give themselves a break. They're perfectionists, right? Or they don't get started. They don't have the push to get started. Maybe they're in a career transition. Very popular right now. People making their money in a transactional type of relationship to work, and maybe their heart is elsewhere, or they've matured. Heartbreak, grief, people going through heartbreak and grief, or realizing through that they haven't healed certain grief. Well, when you want to heal the heart, you don't necessarily want to focus on elevation of your mood. You want to heal the heart. So through consultation, you can get there. Many of the clients we have, maybe they have a psychotherapist or they see a therapist. And what we're trying to do is be a partner, an ally to that conversation, because very often, to the negative, people go see therapists and they're prescribed antidepressants, and the antidepressants tend to have more side effects than they really want. And they haven't had the opportunity to have a consultation on how they might approach microdosing, right?
Yeah. 100%.
And then they start microdosing, and 85–90% of the people who begin microdosing, they don't stop their antidepressants.
Yeah.
They taper off slowly. Very conservative therapists will tell their patients, you got to stop your antidepressants in order to do anything like that. Well, that kind of is a very difficult, if not impossible, to just stop. So we always encourage tapering. But once you're microdosing, what we're seeing, what Derek is seeing, and some of the work he's doing, is people, they start to say, oh yeah, I'm feeling better. My mood is better, but I have issues. I want to identify those issues. So the deeper dive, whether it's just getting someone into a little bit of an altered state, small group, little sitting here and there, takes people to very often with sitting, someone says, oh, I'd love to host a little sitting. I'm blessed. I have the proper environment for that. Maybe it's a property. A lot of people maybe with property upstate or in the tri-state area, they like to host. And it's very very conversational and very then a next step, The facilitation is then more serious. Very often we'll do referrals, right, Derek? Why don't you explain, if someone is interested in facilitation and talking with facilitators, to go to a group or take a retreat, what is the norm? Take them through the ABCs, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, the facilitation option, if you're interested in facilitation, you would write, my email is in the chat, by the way, I've left it in there, but you would write us an email or you would have a consultation with us. And we have a network now that is growing with facilitators kind of that are focused all over the world. And a lot of these facilitators too, they kind of work kind of like caravans. Like they'll come to New York for a little bit, they'll go, then they'll make their way down to Texas, and they have this kind of growing network around they
have a circuit. There's a little bit of a circuit.
So, then we would coordinate with them depending on what type of facilitator you need, whether it is with the mushrooms, whether it's with the ayahuasca or other plant medicine. And then we would coordinate with them. Usually they already have groups people that follow them, right? So, you would be joining a group of maybe 10 people, maybe more, maybe sometimes it's smaller, depending on which route you're trying to go. And then it usually would be a couple weeks out. We would plan a little date, and then then yeah, then it would be go from there. And then they would take charge of more of an integration and an intake form, right? There's a process like Lou was touching on. There's a process with all of these tiers, by the way. It's not something you can just jump into. But that intake is more correlated with their structured program as a facilitator, right? And that same goes for the teachers as well. And teachers are mainly kind of stationed somewhere. The teachers don't really, sometimes they go on the circuit, sometimes not. But yeah, so we're seeing this growing network of people that we're connected to over the years and what Lou has built. And so, yeah, I guess that.
Well, we're building it as a community. But the thing is that what are the risks? And so, look, I mean, every health coach would like to be a shaman, I mean, there's a lot of predatory, because people, when they're struggling with mental illness or feeling, they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think that vulnerability, that emotional vulnerability is something that is very, very important to try to protect. And I mean, that's the work that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We just trying to protect the process so that those of us here, particularly in the New York area, tri-state area, all over the country, can at least have the information so they can make good decisions self-directed. It really is the work that we're trying to do. We do not, when we make referrals to a doctor or for a retreat, we do not earn any commissions. There's no fees we're not sales agents. We've learned that if we just stay in the service of the mushroom, of the medicine, and in the service of the person in front of us, good things will happen. First of all, we're still operating in an environment that's not regulated. So we have to be careful and safe. We want people to achieve their transformative goals, and do it in a way that's safe and trusted. So when we introduce or do intakes, when we introduce doctors or places to go, it's always with the spirit of what's best for the individual. There's many groups to try to earn affiliate fees and commissions off of booking people. Come on down to Jamaica, we'll have a good time. We do not do that. We think it's above our pay scale to be organizing retreats. It's a certain kind of skill. However, in the case of sitters, yes, very often we'll organize sittings, and if we organize sittings, then we make sure that the sitter is compensated and properly set up, and that there's good disclosure, because of course, like any kind of support, there's always the question of liability, and we want to make sure people understand that when you're working with plant medicines, that people have to be informed, they have to take that responsibility, this kind of thing. Yeah. And while we're talking, we'll really like to encourage any questions, just put them into the chat, because we have lots that we can cover, but the purpose of this call for an hour was really to just give some people a chance to ask questions, any kind of questions, and we're happy to curate that and if helpful.
I also just wanted to say too, this is all, the plant medicine itself is a process. Healing is a process, right? The fact that you guys are here, you're already part of this process. So I applaud everyone that has just showed up today. Just that in and of itself is a step towards healing, right? And so, like I was mentioning before, this isn't something you just kind of jump into, which is what I think is happening within our societies. People are just jumping into this medicine by themselves, and they're getting overwhelmed and they get scared by it, and then it has an opposite reaction, right? So like I'm just
well, it's don't you find that you go to a party these days, right? And can I buy you a cocktail? Oh, no, I'm not drinking. What do you mean you're not drinking?
Yeah.
Right? Well, you're
Yeah.
not drinking. Well, you're not drinking. Right? What they say, they're microdosing, right? They're
Yeah.
taking mushrooms, and
Yes.
it is this whole kind of I think this kind of cocktail hour chit chat, you know, of people microdosing.
Yeah.
And it's not clear. Well, what do you mean by microdosing? Oh, eating
Yeah.
mushrooms in a small amount
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
versus you know versus the perception that most people have is microdosing is eating something psychoactive in a small amount, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Very
Yeah.
small perceptions, very low perceptual, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, okay, that's a fairly shallow, you know, fairly
Completely.
shallow understanding of what the purpose of microdosing is. So one of the things we want to educate and caution everyone is as microdosing is a very easy phrase these days for something that could be misunderstood.
100%.
You
And
know,
we're, you know, us at Alchemist Kitchen, something I talk to Lou about a lot is that we're here as a platform mainly for education and destigmatization, right? Because we're living in an age where it's very stigmatized. You got mushrooms posted up everywhere, shroom this, shroom that. Well, they're mushrooms, not shrooms, you know, and so it's more rebuilding this relationship that us as a society have had for thousands and thousands of years, you know, that we're slowly getting back to, but we want us to go back to it in a way that is ethical correctly and done that is honoring the source of where the medicine comes from, as opposed to just, oh yeah, we're in this new renaissance that is indigenous medicine for thousands of years, you know. So yeah.
why don't you share, Derek, while we may
Yeah.
wait for some questions, share a little bit of your personal experience, your
Yeah, for
personal
sure.
join. I'm happy to do it as well, but given the time, I think people would appreciate a little synopsis. Okay, so here you are, you're a team leader. You've got very deep passion and love for the mushroom, and talk a little bit about your personal experience,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
where, if you don't mind, tell us a story
Oh,
or
for
two,
sure. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, me and the mushrooms, we go back kind of for the past 6 years now. I mean, granted, I took my first, you know, LSD experience when I was around 19 or 20. That kind of changed my whole reality, opened my eyes up to what the world really is. And then it was kind of silent for a while with psychedelics and with, you know, with weed. I barely even smoked marijuana at all, you know. But anyways, about 6 years ago, I took a big dose by myself and two other friends, and that kind of propelled me in wanting to learn more about the mushroom, right? Because this is what normally will happen as well with anyone: is that you'll take a big dose of mushrooms and you'll start to understand the world in a way that you never could begin to imagine, right? So it kind of changes your life in some way or another. And so I started to kind of go deep into the literature, and I started reading a lot of Terence McKenna, and I started kind of wanting to understand like the ethos of what this mushroom experience is, what mushrooms are, what all of this is. And then slowly, as I started to develop that relationship, you know, the world kind of started happening, 2020, all this stuff. And I mean, I've been dealing with depression kind of my whole life, and I didn't really want to get onto antidepressants. And slowly but surely, microdosing in a little capsule found its way to me in a point that I was in a very dark place. And I knew I needed, you know, help. I needed some assistance, right? And so I started taking the microdose, and I realized that all of that knowledge that I had with a big dose, you know, magic mushrooms, as they're called, are magical because, like I said, when you take them in a big dose, whoa, you're starting to see, you know, invisible realms, entities, little elves talking to you, all that stuff. But on a quantum level, on a very small scale, they're as equally magical and as equally, you know, ethereal, right? On a quantum level. So I started microdosing, you know, and then what I understood, I started understanding the mushroom on a much deeper level. I started understanding myself on a much deeper level. And I was like, okay, in the beginning, I was like, okay, I don't know what's happening to me, but I'm feeling better. I'm starting to change. I'm feeling more like myself. I'm feeling more like I can kind of deal with my depression. You know, it's not as opposed to an SSRI, for example, which just kind of numbs the pain. It doesn't really heal the pain because you're not really going to the source. The mushroom on a microdosing scale kind of takes you to where the source of these problems come from, right? So after that, I was hooked, and I realized, okay, like this is something that is maximizing myself. And I started microdosing very consistently, very strictly, once every 3 days for the next, up until now, for the next almost 5 years now. It's about 4 years that I've been microdosing, and it'll be something that'll be for the rest of my life, right? And I tell people here too, when I have consultations with them, that there's different levels to the progress of microdosing, right? Like then the first week, the first couple of doses, you're like, whoa, like everything is awesome. You're walking down the street, all these colors, everything's great. You know, you're feeling good. And then slowly, you know, it's kind of like the progress of a movie. And then the movie kind of continues and you start to get very in tune with it and you start paying more attention to it and you start leveling up, kind of like almost like a video game, right? And so going now into the topic of like the macro dosing, right? I believe that there is a balance to be had within our modern era of bigger trips and smaller trips, you know, and it's about finding that balance. So for example, what I like to do at least maybe once a month or every couple months or so, I haven't had one recently because I've been busy, but to take a bigger trip, right? And to take a bigger dose, around 3.5 grams or so. I'm a big hiker. I like to go to the woods. I like to go by myself in nature. A lot of people can't do that, but you know, because what ends up happening is as you're microdosing, as you're developing this relationship on a very small scale with the mushroom and with yourself, things kind of start to get put into perspective and you kind of want to learn more about that. You kind of want to go deeper. So that's where the macrodosing can kind of help you go deeper within something, within a certain idea that
Do you build up tolerance microdosing?
yeah, I mean, so the mushroom psilocybin itself, you can develop a tolerance very quickly, but you can also lose it very quickly, right? Which is where those days in between, those break days are very important. And those are the days that you actually notice the change the most, right? Because as your brain is sending these neurons, right, it's a lot of brain activity on the days that you're taking it. On the days where your brain is resting, that's where you feel literally better and more calm with your anxiety and stuff. But yeah, you can develop a tolerance pretty quickly, but you can lose it very quickly too. I'm noticing we have a question here in the chat. Okay. Vicky
from
is
Vicky.
asking, are you saying if people are grieving or dealing with childhood trauma, the act of microdosing might elevate or exasperate any grieving or depressive feelings and so not be ideal? Does the mushroom exacerbate whatever you're feeling and or microdosing or macrodosing might be risky? It's a very good question, Vicky. I'm happy.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I mean, my brief answer is that the key is the awareness to the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
So if one is living with, let's say, a childhood trauma, they probably have compartmentalized it. I'll give you a good example, quick example. I have a client, 50 years old. When she was 6 years old, her parents bought her a puppy. She fell in love with the puppy, 6, 7 years old. Puppy had an accident. The puppy died. And the parents went out and bought another puppy. The puppy looked completely different than the first puppy. And for 40 years, she had this deep love, this heart that was, she felt love for this puppy and never understood emotionally why the mommy and the daddy didn't fully understand that you can't just go out and replace that feeling without more care and compassion. Okay, that's a trauma. Well, the fact is that the awareness of it coming through microdosing, at least it gave her the moment to aware, liberate, shed the tear, feel it, and that alone is part of the process of transformative and personal growth, because allowing the trauma and realizing you were just a witness to something, it was in many respects, everybody's, especially with family, everybody did the best they could. And so one of the big consequences of microdosing to the positive is you just get more empathetic. You do feel more compassionate.
Mainly
you
with
realize
yourself,
maybe with oneself, you don't hold yourself so responsible. Very often we find with people with trauma, grief, heartbreak, particularly where families, maybe the parents have broken up and the kids are always feeling responsible. And that responsibility, not to oversimplify, is something that is not legitimate, not necessary for that witness, you know. In the sense of the exasperation, I think it's an elevation of awareness. I'm not sure that it exasperates as much as elevates the awareness. And then, of course, it's a question of the strength of the individual, of how they contend with that. Some do it better with the support of a professional, of being able to talk to a therapist.
Yeah.
But the awareness is usually fairly patient, fairly compassionate. It's coming from within oneself. And I think that goes for a lot of how microdosing protects one as they're exploring these root causes, you know, of different trauma. Would you agree, Derek?
Yeah, and something I wanted to just say too, this goes in a lot with intention as well, right? So like I was saying, you know, the difference between, for example, an antidepressant and a mushroom, right, is that the psychedelic, the antidepressant will just numb the pain. You know, that's not curing anything. You're just not feeling it anymore, right? But the mushroom will take you to kind of understanding why you're feeling that way. Why, you know, like depression is such an umbrella term, right? But you start to kind of unpack it. You start to kind of unpack what depression means, and anxiety, overthinking, all this stuff. And so you know, when you have intentions with microdosing, you can start to kind of understand these root causes just a little bit more. And the same kind of goes into macrodosing, right? If you're someone that has unresolved trauma and you're just like, okay, I don't know what this is about, but I'm going to take 3.5 grams of mushrooms here. Well, you might visit a place that isn't necessarily so enjoyable because you haven't necessarily brought that awareness to that subconscious, right? But if you were to have intentions with it and you start to kind of mine at it very carefully, the mushroom will take care of you, because the mushroom doesn't want you to feel bad. The mushroom wants you to feel good. It wants you to be happy, because the more that you feel good, the more that you're alive, the more the mushroom can thrive as well within you, you know? Vicky just responded here. Isn't awareness also sometimes like a booby prize with insight on understanding, but not always transformative for change? For example, you can know something, but not be able to change your heart.
Yeah, I think that, hey, that's very true. It's not easy. It's not easy to change, but the first step in at least preparing for change is awareness, you know. And to your point, Vicky, you know, very often that awareness is not so easy to just let it go, you know, and move on. A lot of other things have to happen. One has to realize that, you know, when you microdose, if you're blessed with a contemplative practice, like if you do meditation or yoga, it only gets better.
Oh yeah,
you know,
100%.
If you're someone who is blessed with an interest in physical exercise, going to the gym, biking, hiking, it only gets better, you know. If you're one who is challenged with eating too much sugar or changing one's diet, it only gets better, you know. So there is a big relationship with the mushroom. Remember, mushroom's not addictive. It really doesn't want to stay in your house any longer than necessary. It really is not.
You got better things to do, you know.
It's got better things to do. But it is very important what Vicky is saying, is that it is you know, when you microdose, you're gonna feel much more connected to root cause. 85% of the people that microdose who have a dependency in some way on alcohol, they stop drinking.
Oh, 100%. I mean, to share again with my experience, right? I stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped smoking cigarettes. I stopped smoking marijuana. I stopped drinking
Eh,
coffee, right? The
yeah,
mushroom wants you to unplug from all of these matrices and do that just very quick.
wherever there's toxicity.
Yeah.
So, doesn't always show up like so straightforward, like, oh, all of a sudden I'm having to confront deep childhood trauma and get
Yeah.
relieved. It's step by step. Anna Potter, you want to read that one?
Yeah, so Anna said, I know ketamine and psilocybin both have great research around treating and alleviating PTSD and depression. Any research around anxiety and psilocybin that y'all can share? Yeah. Do you want to answer that,
I
Lou?
mean,
Or?
I think there's no question that when you microdose psilocybin or even microdose high potency cannabinoids, right? Cannabis cannabinoids now, it's not CBD anymore. It's combinations of cannabinoids that are grown high potency that you can take for relief of stress and anxiety, inflammation and pain. Very often the cannabinoids are better than a psychedelic, but there's no question that when your mood is elevated, you're just not overreacting to triggers that have a tendency to escalate upset. So that could be how the boss talks to me, could be my team that I have to manage and they're just not delivering and my reputation is on the line. It could be the pressures of working remote. It could be the pressures of being a mom and having 3 kids and having to cope with all the things that mothers have to cope with. It could be hormonal microdosing. We have over 30 women microdosing just on their cycles, because through microdosing they realized that when they're on their cycle, that's when they're the most emotionally vulnerable. That's when they've had very often situations that become fairly challenging trauma for themselves. Some, they don't get over it in a cycle. It can take years to get over something that would occur during a hormonal balance. So hormonal for microdosing is a great relief to the anxiety that's very often associated with women's health and cycles. So I think that mood elevation is different than relaxation. It's different than taking something that is relaxing the endocannabinoid system and just working on the endocannabinoid, the receptors in the body. The psilocybin is generating an activation of the serotonin and dopamines and the neurotransmitters. So the way in which the anxiety is tempered is different than if you were taking it in the form of cannabis, and definitely in the form of an antidepressant. Where people who have been maybe using Adderall extensively, that's an example of something where psilocybin is very, very effective in helping to mitigate that usage of Adderall.
Well, also, anxiety is a neurological thing, right? It's a thought pattern. It's grooved within your brain, and so because your brain has been grooving this anxiety time and time again, you're going to start getting anxious just by doing regular mundane things. But what psilocybin does is it puts the fresh layer across your brain so that you can find these new neuronic pathways, right? So it can alleviate anxiety on a neurological level, because like we were talking about, it goes back to the root cause, right? So it's like slowly healing your brain, right? So that you don't have to feel anxious by reading a book or walking around, because you're literally using a different side of your brain now, making new connections.
There's a good question around more about dosing. Yeah, it's very important to know there's well over 100 strains of psilocybin.
Oh, if not more,
if not more.
That we know.
So the future is going to be quite personalized, where people will have use strains of psilocybin, very small doses for different purposes at different times. So if you got creative obstruction, you're creative and you're trying to write your novel or compose a song, you may need a certain strain of psilocybin that are more effective for that than you would if you're simply trying to cope with heartbreak, So we like these Avery albinos, we like the Taj Mahals, we like the blue some strains, to keep it simple, some strains are really good, euphoric, cognitive, you just feel happier.
Yeah.
Other strains, right, Derek, are more full body,
Yeah.
more in the expansiveness, the feeling within the body, mind, body, and spirit, and very good when you're out in a nature, right? So
Yeah.
we're working a lot with different types of strains. There's going to be more and more research on that. I don't think that we have the research today that we
This is
will
where
have.
it gets very interesting, with people that have a lot of that experience. It's now up to us to kind of start to categorize these mushrooms, right? We've entered the future with with psilocybin. We know what psilocybin, the chemical, does. But these strains, these are, you have to think of them like different animals. There's different species out there. Each individual mushroom within a species is different as well, right? Size is vary, all that stuff. And so, a very common categorization of, for example, cannabinoids is you have your sativas and you have your indicas and you got your hybrids. The same kind of works with mushrooms themselves, but now we're learning how to start to categorize which mushroom fits you if you have severe anxiety or if you have severe PTSD, right? All mushrooms, there's an umbrella of the mushroom healing, but now let's hone it in and let's get a little bit more specific.
There's also mashups.
Yeah, there's now.
So you have medicinal mushrooms. Let's take lion's mane. When lion's mane is properly formulated, it's a game changer for focus.
100%.
It's a complete game changer. We have a lion's mane spagyric formulation that is just amazing for clarity and focus. So the reishi mushrooms, very good for heart centering.
Mushrooms
the turkey
love other
tail.
mushrooms.
Yeah, mushrooms love other mushrooms. So I think what we're going to start to see is really fun and exciting is pairings.
Yeah.
Learning. You're going to see a whole new generation of botanical scientists that are going to start to do pairings, matching cannabinoids in plant with mushrooms, matching mushrooms with other mushrooms. This is going to be a big part, I think, of the future as we embrace more regulation.
I want to say also a good point, though. This is something you kind of learn, going back to what I was saying in the beginning. In the beginning, it's kind of like you start off in this video game with a very standardized protocol of a very specific mushroom, and you start microdosing. Once you start learning that relationship, you can start to find these hacks, right? You start to understand that, oh, electrolytes on a microdose day help me bring my energy back, or vitamin C stacked with the mushroom will help me get it a little bit deeper. And so these are all things to help you kind of as you level up, right? This isn't something you just kind of jump into once again,
Well, what we want to do is just encourage all of you that have joined us live and those who get to watch this on the recording. You can reach out to Derek. I think, Derek, you've put your email in there. If anyone would like to have a one-on-one or explore, maybe have friends or family that maybe need this more than we do. We're here for you. We appreciate it. And we want to wish all of you a really a beautiful holiday season and come and give us a visit. And Derek, you have the last word.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, once again, that, just the fact that you're here, the mushrooms have brought you here, right? And so I've always believed that the mushrooms kind of know more than any of us. They don't care about what's happening in the world, I mean, they do, but their agendas are elsewhere. So if you can just keep putting your trust in the mushroom, and by doing that, you're putting your trust in the universe, then you can put your trust in yourself, and you can kind of find this symbiotic relationship, as we move towards the future. So Yeah, congratulations, everyone.
All right.
All
Have a
right.
great evening. Have a great holiday. Thanks so much, guys.
Guys.
Bye-bye now.
All right.